Welcome to Counseling Psychology, Chapter 1, Introduction. You will find in your course that each of Chapter 1, 2, and 3 encompasses Module 1, Basic Issues in Counseling Practice. Let's have an overview of the therapy approaches. This presentation provides an overview of the different types of therapy approaches we are going to be covering this semester. You need to remember therapy plays a pivotal role in addressing mental and emotional challenges, and there are multifaceted benefits. When we talk about some of the key therapies, we are going to cover about 11 different therapies over the semester. From the psychodynamic perspective, therapy provides a platform to explore unconscious thoughts and emotions and shedding light on underlying issues that may be contributing to individuals' distress, to the cognitive behavioral theories that highlight how therapy can help individuals refrain from negative thought patterns, leading to better emotional regulation and behavior modification. So let's take a quick preview of these various theories and therapies. The psychodynamic psychoanalytic therapy approach. The founder is Sigmund Freud. You're probably very familiar with Sigmund Freud because you were introduced to him in Psych 100. The psychoanalytic theory is a form of a personality development understanding of how personality develops early on in life. And there's a very good focus on unconscious factors that motivate behavior. That's one of the key terms with the psychoanalytic psychodynamic perspective is unconscious factors. So there is also an emphasis on early childhood development. So the first 6 years of life are very important under the psychodynamic approach. When we talk about another psychodynamic theorist, we can talk about the founder of Alfred Adler. He's considered a neo-Freudian. Key figures of Adlerian therapies is Rudolf Dreikurs. This is all about growth and stressing one's responsibility in creating one's own destiny, meaning of life, purpose of life. Then we need to talk about the experiential relationship oriented therapies. This is Viktor Frankl, Rollo May, and Irvin Yalom. And these three key figures, especially Irvin Yalom is very famous for his development of existential therapy and group therapy. So this approach looks at the tendency to view therapy as a system of well-defined techniques. And it stresses building on therapy some basic conditions of human existence, such as your freedom, your responsibilities, your choice, and we talk about your self-determination. There's a focus on the quality of person to person in the therapeutic relationship. Other experiential relationship oriented therapies is Carl Rogers person centered therapy. Another key figure is Natalie Rogers. This approach was developed in the 1940s and is considered a non directive approach that was reactive to psychoanalysis, which was very much more directive and looking at unconscious processes. It's based on what we call our subjectiveness, our subjective view. And this is basically your point of view of how you see yourself. And we move off of what the client brings. We don't do a lot of direction. We give a lot of responsibility to the client to conceptualize and articulate what is problematic in their lives. Another experiential relationship oriented therapy is Gestalt Therapy. The founders are Fritz and Laurel Pearls, Miriam and Irving Polster. In this experiential therapy model, there's a stress awareness and integration that came out of similar to the analytical perspectives. Now, I'm going to stop here and give you a little story. Sigmund Freud is probably one of the most famous individuals in psychology, and he wasn't a psychologist. He was a psychiatrist. And the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist is a psychologist is a person often who has a doctoral degree, either a PsyD or a PhD. They do assessment and diagnosing of treatment of mental disorders, particularly assessment, which is testing, versus psychiatrists are medical professionals first. They're medical doctors that specialize in the diagnosis and the treatment of mental disorders. And they often are responsible for prescribing medications. However, in some particular instances, psychologists with additional training can prescribe medications as well. Some of those instances are psychologists in the US military, the territory of Guam, Louisiana, and New Mexico in the states have laws that allow psychologists with additional training to prescribe psychiatric psychotropic medications. So back to Gestalt therapy, it integrates a function of body, mind, and places emphasis on the therapeutic relationship. So if you think back of sensation and perception, and if you think back of the illusions and perceptual constancies and similarity and these various concepts that often focus on the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. This is the approach that Gestalt therapy takes. Then we have the cognitive behavioral approaches, which tend to be the most popular in the counseling world because they have the ability to be empirically evidence based. Because we're looking at observational things that are not subjective or coming out of a person's mind or their crisis of living. So we often have experimentation going along. We have behavior modification. Um, there's methods. We talk about reinforcements and rewards that help us in the therapeutic process. The other half of the cognitive behavioral therapies is the social cognitive behavioral social learning theories, which is what Albert Bandura was most famous for. He often talked about reciprocal determinism, which is the environment, cognitive, and emotional connections that we have. Mindfulness and acceptance is based upon these approaches. And mindfulness training, mindfulness practice has gotten a lot of popularity. If you're on TikTok and you follow some of the psychologists or people who are psychology like, you may hear them talk about mindfulness practices. Then we need to look at another cognitive behavioral approach, which is choice and reality therapies. We often talk about William Glasser, who is often seen as the founder of choice theories. Some key figures is Robert Webb Boulding. Also, we talk about reality therapies, and just like it sounds, we want to ground the person in their reality. We want to get them to think in terms of concrete, not the what ifs that may be circulating around in their thought patterns. Oftentimes, these types of therapies are short term, so they're highly focused and highly concentrated in helping the individual. And oftentimes, individuals may like this approach, especially if they like an approach that is not going to take a lot of time, or they're in a level of current distress and they want some resolution relatively quickly. Then we need to get into our postmodern approaches and system approaches and feminist therapies. These are, just as you read in the title, are more contemporary therapies that we have in counseling theory. Now, in psychology, counseling psychology and psychology, clinical psychology, there's over 500 plus therapeutic models. Many of them fall into these these basic categories that your textbook is going to cover. Some of them are subcategories within those 11 categories in approaches. So if we look at some of the feminist approach, we can look at many women. Jean Baker Miller, Carolyn Zerby Enns, Olivia Espin, Laura Brown, to name a few. This is not an exhaustive list of these individuals. The central concept of the feminist approach to therapy is centering and focusing on the psychological oppression of women in Western society, focusing on constraints imposed by social political status, which women have been regulated to. So you also have to keep in mind a lot of these therapeutic therapies and counseling approaches were developed in a very specific way, during a specific time period as well. We can say they can be very Eurocentric because modern psychology has its roots in Germany, and they also tend to be very male centric because many psychologists who were developing these theories and who had positions of power were men. And this is why the feminist theoretical perspectives, therapy, counseling perspectives came into existence because of that. We even have cultural centered therapeutic models as well. So other postmodern approaches are, we talk about systems therapies, we talk about social constructivism. We have several key figures who look at solution-focused therapies and system-focused therapies. And essentially, just as a sound, system, looking at systematic things that are happening within the cultural community, environmental realm of the individual, and focusing on how that impacts individuals and families. And then we talk about solution focused brief therapies. These are often employed, or I should say deployed, when people are in crisis. And also, it is very good for individuals who are constrained by time. Solution brief focus therapy can be a very powerful model to get the person jump started. Also, narrative theory. We talk about acceptance and commitment therapies, which we focus on accepting where the individual is and looking at how they perceive themselves in terms of human interaction as well. And the last approach that we're going to look at today is the family systems therapies. The two most important people who developed this theoretical perspective, counseling perspective, is Murray Bowen and Virginia Satir. And the systematic approach assumes that the key to changing individuals is understanding and working within a family system, that individuals are not individuals. They are part of a system, and the first system that one is a part of is the family. So as a counseling professional, you focus on the idea of the organization that the person is in, which is the family. So overall, when we talk about being a counseling practitioners, you need to pay attention to what clients are thinking, feeling, and doing, because this is very important in choosing the therapeutic model, addressing these three aspects of what's happening with the individual. And, the therapies help highlight the role of cognitive factors in counseling. That's all in our head. We like to be very intellectual in some cases when we're talking about our problems, because emotions and feelings bring up certain things. So oftentimes we try to avoid those emotions and feelings and kind of think things away. So it's very important to realize feeling, thinking, and doing is all a part of the counseling therapeutic model.